Hello and welcome to Rambling Reviews. This episode, right? This is, this is genius, right? Like, this is really good stuff. Every episode of the show this season has pretty much been better than the last one, maybe exception. And that trend has continued pretty much as a rule today. The mall car. We're talking about the mall car. So the previous one obviously was a Lucky Cat car. When I finished recording that, I immediately, out of just eagerness, watched the mall car, and was like, my mind kind of melted. And I was like, do I record now while I'm like really frazzled and excited and really want to talk about it? I was like, no, that's going to be the worst. Like it's just going to be me going, and then this happened, and then this happened. There's too much energy behind it. So I was like, I'll give myself some time to like properly process my thoughts. So I actually took a couple days off recording. But I always watch them twice anyway. So I watched it straight after I recorded the Lucky Cat Car episode. And now today I sat down to watch it again prior to this one. And unfortunately, the episode is so good, my energy levels are just really high again. Like, it's just so good. Everything about this I loved in every way. I mean, we'll get this out the way up top. A reasonable amount of correct predicting in the previous episode, but as I pointed out in the previous episode, where you're predicting both that Jesse's number will go up so high that it keeps him on the train for a couple more episodes, and you're also predicting it goes low enough to get to the portal. I mean, one of those two very distinctly opposite predictions might come true. I did get wrong. The idea actually would get like halfway, would get halfway out of the train on the portal and then fall into the wasteland. Completely wrong. I did correctly predict the connections to the conductor, but I did not see the 1-1 angle of it at all. I really didn't see this idea that I was like, oh, they honor the conductor. I don't think I understood how much that meant them disliking the new conductor and them like sort of almost unifying against 1-1. That whole element of it and the way that was all handled, brilliant. But I'm getting really ahead of myself here. Let's just slow this down and recap this episode. I knew this would happen. As soon as I finished watching it the second time, making my notes, I was like, I'm gonna have too much energy. But I mean, that was the danger when I did it the other day too. Such a good episode. So, for those who don't recall, they head into the mall car with the guys from Apex, who have completely taken over this car of the train. We get this implication that basically they're from, or at least the leaders are from pre-1-1 conductorship on the train, and from their perspective, 1-1's a fake conductor that's come in and usurped the old one. Again, did not quite understand the real way they were going to actually play that at all. I kind of, from the face drawings, I was like, yeah, they sort of are like followers of like the old conductor. I really didn't understand that to them, and from their perspective, the train was taken from them. Like they were, that's so clever. So clever, because as I pointed out earlier in this series, it's really interesting to think that there are people on this train that might not have had those videos. Tulip didn't get one, so we knew that they didn't happen during Amelia's time as the conductor, and I speculated even the possibility that maybe Jesse had gotten on prior to that as well, and that's why his number was so low. It's before we knew his number started low. And evidently that was on the mind of the creators too. They've come to it in a different way, but it's a really interesting idea, and it's funny that even though I sort of suggested there was a possibility of people on the train from Amelia's time back then, it's come back now and I didn't predict it even though I was talking about Amelia last week. So that's really fun. It's great. It's so good. I've gotten distracted, haven't I? So they get on, that's what we find out they're really about. They're sort of about keeping on the train. They feel like 1-1's tricking them, basically. This is the real element I didn't understand. So 1-1, they think, has usurped the true conductor and is trying to get the train to be just for those who aren't passengers, to get all the humans off this train, and he's tricking them all into getting their number down to 0 so they can leave, but it's not. It's because he wants to get them off. The logic of that is deeply flawed, because obviously they know more people are coming on the train. because people are getting the videos. So, I mean, they need to question themselves. That's fine though. I think all of the, a lot of the worst, like, insane cults and groups and dictatorships and, like, all those groups that have occurred over the years have always had deeply flawed, reprehensible logic. So it's it's not a problem at all. It's not even an inconsistency. It's just the way these people get when people get fanatical like that and in a belief. They don't tend to that lack of reason and really thinking it through doesn't always come through. Like, because you want to believe. I've just realised there's been a ticking the whole way through this, so there might have been a ticking the whole way through this. Let me just move. We got those when we went to Japan a couple of years ago, and we got these like toys like a panda that when it gets into sunlight it wobbles back and forth and clicks. And there's another one that's like a golden poop. I'll take a picture of them and stick them on screen now if you're watching. They've been clicking for the first few minutes of this. I'm not going to re-record because I'm never going to remember everything I said. So sorry if that was irritating. They've gone now. I don't even know if you'll be able to hear them. I could just be rambling. Anyway, this idea that like they've grown this sort of like thing. I think the quote is something like, this is strength. And Grace says that when she holds up her arm and shows all the numbers. And I think it's people, it makes sense. If there's people on the train looking to get better, there are people obviously not looking to get to improve, to not be better people, to not want to leave. I mean, it occurred to me even, I think in the first year, I don't know if I ever said it, but like this idea, actually, you know what? Some people might not want to leave. Ever. It's a really weird, fun, crazy place. What happens to those people? And I guess partly stuff like this. Obviously this is a bit more based on a specific ideal, but the notion that there'd be people who'd want to stay on the train makes perfect sense to me. Who'd want to take ownership of it. I mean, that's what happened with Amelia, really, in the long run, in a sort of roundabout way. So anyway, they've taken over this mall car, and they fashion an excuse for MT to stay behind while they take Jesse out, because they're basically trying to win Jesse over to their way of thinking. And his number is slowly going up the whole time he's going along with them, because of course this is what's so good about this episode, is the way it so clearly ties to Jesse's central dilemma. It's genius. Eventually he realizes that basically they call them noughts, I think. Do they call them noughts? Nons, maybe? As in nothings. They're worth nothing. They're not even human. And that's basically anything on the train that isn't a human or a passenger with a number. Doesn't, as far as they're concerned, doesn't have feelings, doesn't really exist, and they can treat them how they want, which is a horrendous. I mean, there are some. I mean, you could definitely draw some out, like some lines here between this group and some various hate groups that have existed in the real world over the years. With sort of a warped ideology. It's surprisingly dark for the show, but so genius, fits within the world so well. It's that thing of having a villain where even if their logic is flawed, you totally understand their logic, whether you agree with it or not. You're just like, oh, I see how you've got there. And that just makes the villain all the more powerful, because they're a villain that essentially really truly understands what it is they're fighting for, and they are fighting for something. And to Grace and Simon, they're the good guys in their story, and you believe that. They really do believe that they're helping Jesse, and that the other beings on this train don't exist. They're wrong, and you know that, and I know that. They're obviously hurting other beings, but I totally get how they got there. It feels like a video game, right? It's such clever logic that these people would have gotten on this train and not see them as real beings. It's brilliant. And they take Jesse to this other train car to try and show him what they do, which is loot and take for themselves. And there's this like really adorable little jelly guy whose name I don't know, and they break these cubes, and he looks so sad. And then basically what we realize is they were only keeping Mirror Tulip around because they thought Alan Dracula might be useful. But once she starts kicking up a fuss, they're like, we'll just wheel her, which basically means throwing her under the wheels of the vehicle. Realizing that he's once again gotten himself into a group that's sort of a facsimile for what happened with him and his brother, like that, sort of peer pressuring him into basically throwing a loved one under the wheels of the vehicle, is a very, very one-to-one sort of recreation of Jesse's actual dilemma at home with his brother. There's this group he wanted to fit in with, and he had to put his brother ahead of them, but he didn't. He made the wrong choice. This time he made the choice for Tulip rather than his own peace. And looking back over this now, the times I think I have been confused a little bit about Jesse's number going down in certain times, I think when it's not felt clear to me, I think it's because essentially it's been whenever he's done something that's arguably put him in more danger. It's not just about helping someone else; it's about helping someone else at his own cost. Because previously he didn't want to, shake the boat. He didn't want to rock the boat, So the Parasite, for example, it was for Alan Dracula's sake, and it didn't help his relationship with Perry at all, But he wanted Perry to like him, which is why he was so willing to be on board with Perry. So by getting rid of Perry, he was making Perry maybe not like him, but it was for the good of Alan Dracula. So I'm starting to see that maybe I was sort of just framing it incorrectly when I was talking about it in those early episodes. But I guess that's again, it's always been a little bit nebulous, and that's fine. I think it's good that you can debate these things and sort of try and work out what the logic is and was. That's how I'm seeing it at the moment. It's really interesting because at the moment where I'm recording this, only 2 or 3 have gone up, so I've not really gotten. Those episodes haven't been released yet, so I'm going to wait to see if people's comments start sort of, because I've sort of come to a realization over a course of episodes, and I'm wondering if as they release, people will start calling me out on that, which is fair. Some of those criticisms aren't really valid when I look back. Anyway, the ending of the episode, I'm still recapping. This is ridiculous. See what I mean? This is what I didn't want to happen, and why I gave myself 2 days off, and then rewatching it just got me this hyped again. It's ridiculous. This is how I knew it would be all over the place. Bear with me, please. So they go back. Jesse finds out they're about to throw to another thing. He makes the right choice. He saves her and Alan Dracula from Grace and Simon. Who, by the way, I should have mentioned this. I don't recognise Grace at all, but Simon looks really familiar to me, and I was wondering because last season I freeze framed the people that were that Amelia brought up on the screen, and looked at it, and I was trying to figure out if any of them could be the next season's protagonist, and there was some with huge numbers like hers and some with small numbers, and the Simon looks like he might be from that screen. I haven't gone back to look yet because I'm really scared to Google anything about this. I'm so close to the end. I don't want to stumble over any spoilers. So I could be right on that, and if I'm wrong, sorry. But you feel free to comment below, because by the time this is released, I'll have watched them all. But it's interesting. I'm sort of unsure with that, but I think there's a chance he was in that screen, but which would make sense because he was obviously on the train during Amelia's time as conductor. Anyway, I digress. So Amelia and Simon sort of he doesn't want to. He rejects them, and he goes to help MT, and then they Grace having worked it out. Sorry, did I say Amelia and Simon? Grace and Simon. Sorry. Grace, having worked out the mirror tulip situation, releases the flex, and they're chasing them just as Jesse's number finally hits 0 and he gets his portal. The heartbreak of this. Ugh. After being told for a whole episode, after being told for her whole life that she is no more than a reflection of another person and not her own being, and then to get in this car with these Apex people who also believe she's valueless. The power of that. And then she can't go through the portal because she's not a passenger. Sorry. Oh. That's just a cough. But at the worst time. How powerful is that in this day and age? the system's discriminating. Was that message intended? I don't know, but that's what I took from it. How powerful is that? To be told to feel you're not as good as your prime, you only live to serve your prime your whole life, to free yourself from that system. And they're chasing her. She's done nothing wrong with the want to be herself, and she's being hunted. She gets on this car where they tell her she's worthless. And then Jesse, the one person who sees worth in her, one person who sees value in her, wants to take her home with him. He wants to do the right thing. He sees her. And he goes through his portal, as he should. And he tries to bring her with him. But the very system doesn't allow it. Because biology, I guess. She's physically a being of reflectivity and can't necessarily travel to the prime world. Holy shit. Fuck. I mean, the visual I speculated on in the previous, episode. Shoot me. Like, terrible. No way. Don't do that. This is so much better. This is so much more powerful. Just a physical barrier stopping her from progressing, stopping her from succeeding, stopping her from living as she wants to live. I cannot tell you how genius this is on so many levels. Because, so we not only have we got all this incredible allegory for MT, but obviously Jesse's final dilemma here echoes his problem with his brother so well. This is incredible television on every level. I cannot express how much this episode got me excited. I mean, I'm hoping it's... no, I'm not hoping. I know it's coming across because I'm fucking gibbering because I'm giddy at how good this was. The way this is structured, the way this comes together, the way this ties its science fiction-y concepts to those real-world allegories is nothing short of masterful. And I'm going to take a second here just to admire what the creative team here have achieved. And, I'm doing a review thing. I found, to keep these things balanced, I've picked at a couple of things to sort of to say negatively about episodes in the, over the past couple, because that's what you do when you're reviewing something, right? Here's some stuff I liked, here's some stuff I didn't like. The overall is positive. That's just how reviews work. You have to have something to say. You sort of pick through it, and this episode is so good. First of all, there's nothing that I can think of that I want to say negatively about this episode. But number two, I just wanted to make it very clear that this episode somehow retroactively makes even little niggles vanish from the rest of the season, because this was a game of chess, and Owen Dennis was 8 moves ahead of all of us, or certainly was eight moves ahead of me, in terms of there were choices being made that were leading us to here. And any criticism or questions that might have come with those choices wiped away in an instant when they knocked this out of the park the way they did here. This is genius. It's really good. So let's take a look at some of the details. Straight up in the beginning, like, we were reaffirming Mirror Tulip's situation. She still doesn't really have a name. She still doesn't have an identity, and that name now it's no longer just about what do we call you. It really is come now in clearer than ever before, and this has always been the case, but this is extra true here. Her name, or lack of one, truly is the crux of her identity crisis. It represents it. I think she'll get a name when she finally finds herself. And that may come soon. That may not come soon. I suspect the end of the series. But the way they re-established that at the start of this episode is really, really good. She basically, they ask her what it is. She once again says no. She doesn't have a name to these people until Jesse's like, oh, MT. And she's like, it's still not really a name to her. It's just what people are having to practically refer to her as. The idea that they set up wheeling it early in the episode, and in such a sort of like light, carefree way, like, oh, you don't like this food? Wheel it. And they throw it under the wheels, is like such a brilliant way set it up as a really light, harmless activity, like a little bit of littering, sure, but like, these little rebel kids, they think just throwing a thing to the ground is like a real rebellious move, and then later on they're like on a wheel to like empty. Dear Lord, like that's a big jump, and you as soon as they say it, like I'm visualizing that like bag of food going under that wheel, and then like attributing that to the new situation and going like, oh, that's no. So I love that. There's two references to a book that I want to point out. So I said it previously that I didn't think Amelia would like deliberately have started this. I feel like the whole where she was left off in the end of the last series was maybe to go find herself and grow and maybe get off the train. And I like to think that if this happened, it happened outside of her will, because that would suggest regression or lack of progress for her. And I don't like that. I like the idea that she went off and found herself and maybe even got off the train eventually, you know. I don't need to see her again. And I'm now worried we might, because there's these two references. So the first is Apex. Cool name, her. I got it from a book. Okay. Very specific. Second reference later in the episode. These are both from Grace, I believe. She's a null. She's nothing. I read it in a book. Now this suggests to me that Amelia may have written some sort of book. Question, I suppose, is did she write it as conductor or post being conductor? If she wrote it as conductor, doesn't really matter. She's accidentally influenced this. And if anything, we could bring her back then, because then she could come back and see the damage her words have sown, you know, and that could be really powerful. You know, having Amelia sort of, God, the third season could be Amelia. Oh, I've just had a great idea. Please let them do this. The third series could be Amelia going on her journey to get off the train. It'd be different, because we'd have an older passenger for the first time. She's a bit older now. Someone who's also very experienced and very knowledgeable about the train, softening, maybe with a younger passenger, sort of simultaneous journey. But then she comes across these Apex people. Because I'm not actually 100% sure the Apex people are even going to come back going through this episode, through this season now, because we've got a situation now where it's really going to be about Mirror Tulip finding her identity and getting free, at least of the Mirror Police, and finding her place in this world. And there's only 3 episodes to do that. I don't know how much the Apex people are going to play into that necessarily. They're the ideas that fuel what's so good about their storyline, and they were perfectly positioned here to push both. That's the other thing that's so genius about all these pieces coming together, is they're so perfectly positioned to push both Mirror Tulip and Jesse's stories forward. Like, how clever does it have to be that you can come up with one premise, which is this group of Apex kids, that feels both really clever and unique, ties into the previous season, and pushes both your main character stories forward? Again, I cannot express how genius the writing in this show is. It's absurd. Anyway, the idea I'm thinking is, like, you could have you could make the third book about Amelia going through the train and finding these guys. And maybe the book they were referring to here was something that was like her diary from when she was conductor, and she was manipulating the train and like making changes, and maybe she did, describe herself as the one true conductor, and that one was a false conductor. Maybe that's where they got all this information from. You know, maybe she said humans are the apex on the train and that they should be able to control the train, and maybe that's why she took the conductorship. I mean, it makes sense. And maybe she did describe, because she was manipulating, like she turned Atticus into that cockroach monster with no care in the world. She clearly didn't think much of the denizens of this train, the beings that inhabit it. So it could potentially be that she did write some sort of book. But it's not a coincidence, that's for sure. It's 2 very specific references. It's definitely relevant. Where it's going, I don't 100% know. Will it come back this season? Will even the Apex people come back this season? I genuinely don't know. I'm leaning towards no right now. I don't feel like we'll see them again. I feel like that's something that we're going to have to deal with at a later date. They're not the crux of the story, and I don't see them having to serve any more purpose than they already have at this stage. Could be wrong, but we'll see. I loved all the stores, by the way, in the mall car. I haven't talked about this, but there's so many great details. There's a Dagenhaus, which looks like an ice cream shop. There's a Warties, which is like it looks like Macy's, I think. The Sunglass Dojo instead of Sunglass Hut, and they're my two favorites I've saved for last. And there's a bunch I don't recognize either. That, like I'm guessing are American store references that I just don't know. But Soggy Donuts instead of Dunkin' Donuts. That's chef's kiss. That's beautiful. And my absolute favorite was the Democratic Banana instead of Banana Republic. So good. So yeah, if you rewatch this episode, if you haven't seen it since you originally saw it, watch it again, but with an eye for the shops. Because the first time I watched it, I wasn't paying too much attention. I was very drawn into the story. But the second time I watched it, I was kind of looking out for little references in the shops, because I had noticed maybe one of them, like the Dargenhaus or something like that, and sort of made a mental note that when I come back to it, to keep an eye out for them. And I paused it a couple of times, went back, scrubbed through, and had a look at them. And yeah, there's some great ones. There's a bunch I didn't get, like Dad's Hair Club for boys, Trucks, which might be a skateboard shop, maybe. Old Gravy, which Old Navy. Is that a store? I don't know. There's one that looks like it's a parody of FedEx, but you can't see what the parody actually says, because it says Fed something, and the Apex kids have spray painted Fed Up on it. There's one that's like Noodle Nod or something like that. Like there's a bunch. They're really fun. They probably make a lot more sense to Americans, like some of those last ones. I did love the aesthetic of the mall car, and it's exactly what I predicted it would be. Kids, I think I said skateboarding. I think they were rollerblading, maybe, or something. Graffiti everywhere. I mean, it's a really pretty, maybe not predictable image, but it is. I think it's a little. It's a slightly predictable image, but it's very. It works really well. It conveys exactly what it's supposed to immediately. So I've not really, again, not a criticism at all. Just a nice, simple way to give you this idea of kids, and it's that old thing, you know. It's the kids from Hook, you know. It's what are they called? Them what do they call that group of kids from the Peter Pan things? Damn it. What are they called? This is really bad, because now I'm just Googling stuff when I should just be talking, but it's going to drive me absolutely mad. Lost Boys. So it's kind of that, you know, the Peter Pan Lost Boys idea, you know, a bunch of kids, no parents, they've gone crazy, they're spray painting and trash and stuff and stealing and skateboarding, and, like, you know, it's a really sort of nice, simple visual that tells you all you need to know. Episode can focus on the stuff it needs to. Perfect. Works. Functions. So if anyone vaguely impressed, I kind of predicted that. I promise you, there's nothing impressive about that at all. It's really what they were gonna. Yeah. I liked that we got a little hint. Obviously, we got confirmation for sure that Jesse saw the video in the pod, because he says, when I was in my pod, the conductor told me told me to get it down. I thought he was funny and gloomy, which I thought was a really nice way of confirming that both that Jesse has good taste in people, because one is funny and gloomy, and but also that he got that message, and we know that he's not from. We know exactly that he did genuinely come in shortly before Mira Tulip met him. Fake little robot wants to get rid of all of us, kick humans off the train. Yeah, I've already kind of talked about that. I've covered a lot of stuff. I like that they show Jesse's numbers slowly going up every time he sort of caves to even the smallest, like, micro peer pressures. Like, just them asking him to come with them, and that MT was going to stay, it goes up. He's like, yeah, and it seems really harmless in the moment, but you see his number going up, and you know the bad thought patterns sort of looping through his head. And so yeah, I think that's I'm not going to tell you the million ways in which my heart broke when the little guy and the cute little character in that cube car looked sad because they were destroying his cubes. That's, from an animation perspective, yeah, I mean, heartbreaking. Like, I was like, genuinely, that upset me, like that visual. Yeah. I noted as well when Jesse finally stood up to the Apex kids, I'm done with you and anybody else like you. Very much confirming he's not just done with these kids, but he's done with the people who claim to be his friends back home too. And I think that's the real final straw. I feel like if he'd been like, I'm done with you, his number would have gone into like 1 or 2. I feel like it was that extra push of realization that no, this has got to extend further than just this situation was really what pushed him down. Where does it go from here? Is the last thing I've asked in my notes. Well, Jesse's gone home. Do we see him home? Not sure. Is the journey now Tulip's journey to catch up with Jesse? It's interesting that my early prediction of Jesse getting home or getting his portal earlier than Tulip did, and like sooner in the show, so we could focus on the LMT story at the end, has turned out accurate. Because as the series went on, I actually doubted that theory quite strongly because it didn't make sense to me as much once their stories became so intertwined. Because, you know, Jesse helping MT was really felt like important to his story, and her helping him felt like it was going to create growth for her. She may not have a number, but she is growing. And once I realized their stories are so intertwined, you know, they both needed to learn something from each other. I kind of doubted the idea of Jesse going early and leaving MT to finish up, you know, her plot and focus on her plot, which was my very earliest idea of how the season might pan out. Because like, he's got such a low number, maybe he'll go sooner, and we'll, you know, we start with MT, Jesse comes in, Jesse leaves, then we finish on MT. Now I'm thinking the journey is going to be about getting back to Jesse, and I'm wondering, do we go back through the mirror world? Is that how we can get to Jesse? Can we go to can she go back into the mirror world and sort of like temporarily reflect him? Or could we get, because also you kind of want to see that I think you want to see him make up with his brother and tell those bullies off. So does she go back to reflect him, but he can't see her? So she takes the risk of going back into the mirror world just to see that Jesse's okay. And from reflective surfaces, she's looking out and witnessing those events. You could do that. I think that's a fun idea. But actually, I'll be honest with you, I really don't know now where we go from here. Like, the end of the last episode, I very clearly had elements of this episode in my head. It's funny, we talked about this a lot on Nothing But Static, but sometimes when you're watching a TV show, there's the show's predictable, but in this sort of, there's only one right way for this to go. Like, there's only one way. They've created such a perfect story that it's kind of predictable where it's ending, and to subvert it would be to harm the work they've done laying out the track of that path. So like, when I look at like the last episode and the percentage of this episode I kind of predicted, I'm like, well, yeah, they'd laid really good tracks that were clearly leading in a certain direction. But what's interesting is I don't see where the tracks go anymore. I really don't. And I don't know if that's like genius or not. I guess I'll find out when I watch the next, 2 or 3 episodes. But I genuinely don't know what next now. I know we're going to have an episode of Miracle reflecting on her situation, because I feel like her out in the wasteland, there's not going to be anyone else out there with her. Maybe Alan Dracula. How she's even going to get out there, I don't know. I guess in her maybe in her escape attempt from the Flex, she'll end up off the train, and they'll just deem that good enough, or they'll think she's dead. Maybe they'll think she's gone under the wheels. I don't know, but okay, you put her out there. Then what? I don't know. This is genius. It's so clever, because you just sort of, I don't even know what I want from it. And like, I'm at a point where there's so little track laid in front of me now of where it goes from here, that anything they do is going to surprise or impress me, assuming that it keeps on the same sort of level of quality as this. I think we're in a really interesting position with this show now, where I've run out of road, and I genuinely, I don't have anything about how these next few episodes play out. Literally none, with the exception of that one possibility, because of her seeing Jesse through the mirror world. And the only reason I even come up with that idea is because I'm thinking of an excuse of how we can go back and find out how Jesse's done, because I want to see Jesse. That's selfish rather than predictive. So yeah, I don't know. And if the writers wanted the same thing, maybe they contrived a similar logic, and maybe that's the way it will go. I feel like it probably won't, though. I feel like I'll be pleasantly surprised. It's been a really great season, and in truth, like the episodes like this are really why you watch a show like this in the first place. You know, they're why you just you invest this time in a really entertaining show, and the way this has paid off, it's doubled. It feels like I've by getting. It feels like if I'd have stopped one episode earlier and just not watched any further, I'd be robbing myself of like all those episodes seem better in hindsight now, which is crazy because it's just I understand now how masterful the way this is all weaved together is. Now I can see it, the whole picture. You know, it's like not appreciating a puzzle until you put the last pieces in. Because you can't see the whole thing. This is retroactive and making the whole season even better, and I was already enjoying it. That's what's crazy. So yeah, if you haven't figured it out, I really like this one. I have no idea where we're going from here, but I'm very excited to find out. I know I say that pretty much every week, but like that is doubly so this time. So yeah, we'll see. So come back. I don't know what the next episode's called off the top of my head. Oh no, I do. It's The Wasteland, isn't it? I definitely know that because I keep making various predictions regarding it. It's the episodes after that. I'm not really sure what they're called. So yeah, thanks very much for watching. I'll come back in 2 days' time to hear me ramble, probably as enthusiastically about episode 8, The Wasteland. Thanks for watching.